The name Don Knotts brings back memories of nervous stuttering, big round eyes, and a laugh that went through many years. He was Barney Fife, the helper cop who turned being clumsy into funny stuff in the Andy Griffith Show. He won 5 Emmy Awards and became one of TV's most loved stars. But that story didn't end with people clapping. Under all the laughs was a man hurt by fear, sickness, and being alone. His daughter Karen Knotts, now 71, has decided to tell about the private hurt her father carried. The truth hidden behind years of smiles. What she tells is not trying to make his memory look bad, but to finish it. Because behind the lovable helper cop was a weak soul. One who lived through childhood hurt, scary worry, and a fight against sickness that even being famous could not fix. A childhood of dark times. Jesse Donald Knotts was born on July 21, 1924 in Morgantown, West Virginia, the youngest of 4 brothers. He was born when the family was already having trouble. His mother, Elsie Lucetta, was 40 years old when he was born, while his father, William Jesse, had serious personal problems that made home life hard. Andy never knew what would happen. Being steady was often out of reach, and young Don grew up in an feeling of not knowing what would happen that left a deep mark on him. His 3 older brothers were much older, and instead of being close friends, they often lived in their own worlds. Don looked up to his brother Sid, who was naturally funny and could make even the worst days better. Sid's sudden death from an asthma attack was a terrible moment for the family and especially for Don. It was his first real time with losing someone, and not having the brother he looked up to most left a sadness that never completely went away. In the middle of hard times, Don turned to pretending a she's safe place. He made a dummy named Danny, who became both a friend and a funny partner. With Danny, Don could make up playful acts that helped him forget the problems around him. At school, he began to use humor more openly, doing small funny acts that showed a spark of talent. Thoughtless mates picked him as class president and liked his company. Don still felt like he didn't belong. The space between how others saw him and how he felt inside would stay a main part of his life. His daughter Karen Knotts later thought that her father's nervous, high-strung character on screen was not just acting. It was a copy of worry he carried with him from childhood. Every laugh, every big twitch came from something real. Comedy became his armor, a way to conjure fear into connection. The little boy from Morgantown had found out that humor could not only entertain others, but also protect himself from the darkness he carried within. Finding a stage in uniform, when Don's first try at New York show business failed, he came home crushed but not giving up. The year was 1943, and with the world at war, he joined the United States Army. His job, however, was not on the battlefield but on the stage. He worked in the 6817th Special Services Battalion, a group made to bring entertainment and help to soldiers under constant stress. It was here, traveling across the Pacific with the touring variety show Stars and Gripes, that Don found out the power of his nervous energy. The soldiers loved him, not because he was brave, but because he showed their own fear, and being easily hurt in a way that turned pain into laughter. By the time he left the Army in 1946, he had won medals, including the World War I Victory Medal, the Philippine Liberation Medal, and 4 Bronze Service Stars. But beyond the honors, he carried a better stage presence, one that gave him a sense of purpose he had never fully felt at home. The boy who had once been scared under his father's anger was now standing before crowds getting their attention. After the war, Don returned to West Virginia University and worked toward a degree in education with a minor in speech, finishing in 1948. On campus, he performed often using both his dummy Danny and his own quick wit to win over audiences. He also met Catherine Metz, a minister's daughter who became his first wife. In 1949, with only $100 in his pocket and Catherine at his side, Don returned to New York City. This time, he had something more valuable than money: experience, toughness, and the drive to succeed. It was not instant success. Casting directors still found him too awkward, too jittery for leading roles. Yet his not giving up kept him going with radio jobs and small performances. Slowly, a career began to take shape. He got roles on radio westerns like Bobby Benson and the B-Bar B-Riders, and finally appeared on television in Search for Tomorrow. For the first time, his worried movements found a home on screen. Don was moving toward the big break that would define his life, the Andy Griffith Big Break. By theme at 1,950 seconds, Don Knotts was no longer just another struggling actor in New York. His special style caught the attention of Steve Allen, who cast him in comedic cheese on The Steve Allen Show in 1956. Don played jittery, big-eyed characters in fake interviews, and audiences loved it. For the first time, his nervous energy wasn't a problem. It was his special thing. That same year, hem it up again with Andy Griffith on Broadway in No Time for Sergeants. Don's playing of a clumsy corporal was a perfect match to Andy's country charm. Their working together was clear, and it planted the seed for what would become one of television's most well-known partnerships. In 1960, Griffith started The Andy Griffith Show. Don, half-joking, suggested he be cast as the helper cop to Andy's sheriff. The idea stuck, and soon Barney Fife was born. It was their role that changed everything. Week after week, Don changed awkwardness in top-tier comedy gold. His twitchy expressions, his stuttering delivery, and his endless energy turned Barney into a national treasure. Within 5 years, Don had earned 5 Emmy Awards and made his place in television history solid. But success on screen came at a heavy cost behind the scenes. His marriage to Catherine Metz, which had begun with so much hope, was falling apart. Under the weight of his career, the long hours on set and Don's never-ending anxiety created distance that neither could fix. Reports suggest that Catherine never fully connected with the Hollywood circle, and her relationship with Andy Griffith's wife was tense. After 13 years and 2 children together, the marriage ended in divorce. Karen Knotts, his daughter, later admitted that while audiences loved her father, life at home was far from easy. Don's constant worry, his tiredness from performing, and his needing anxiety medicine made a family life rough. The man who made millions laugh often came home tired and quiet. For Karen, the difference between America's favorite helper cop and the father she knew was Harp. The big break that gave Don fame also made deeper the personal struggles that haunted him for decades: fame, anxiety, and the lonely middle years. In 1965, at the height of his fame, Don Knotts made a decision that shocked fans. Believing the Andy Griffith Show would end after 5 seasons, he said no to renewing his contract and instead signed a movie deal with Universal Pictures. He dreamed of becoming a leading man, of stepping out from Barney Fife's shadow. For a time, it seemed possible. Films like The Incredible Mr. Limpet and The Reluctant Astronaut allowed him to be the star, but the magic of Mayberry was hard to copy. Audiences loved Don Buttonly as the jittery sidekick. His 1969 film, The Love God, a dirty comedy about a Playboy publisher, proved that viewers couldn't accept him as a romantic lead. The box office stumbled, and so did Don's confidence. Meanwhile, his private battles got worse. Don had long suffered from scary anxiety, often spending days in bed before a performance. Doctors gave him medicine in the 1950s, but it quickly became something he needed. His daughter Karen would later reveal that the anxious characters audiences laughed at were a mirror of his own fears. He wasn't just acting nervous, he was living it. As his film career struggled, the gap between the man and the mask got bigger. By the 1970s, Don tried to reinvent himself with The Don Knotts Show, a variety program meant to show his talents, but the series failed to compete with other popular variety shows and was canceled within a year. Work-wise, he continued to find work, guest appearance, Disney comedies, and later regular roles on Three's Company. Yet, despite the steady jobs, there was a lingering sense of going down. He was no longer the Emmy-winning star, but a supporting act, filling spaces once lit by brighter flames. Personally, Don drifted. His first marriage was over, and though he was often seen with women, lasting friendship avoided him. Karen remembered that people loved Barney Fife, but they didn't always know how to love Don Knotts. Fame gave him recognition, but it did not cure the being alone or fading away sense that his best days had already passed, getting sick and final love. By the 1980s, Don Knotts had made his place as a television legend safe, but his personal life was falling apart once again. His second marriage to Laura Lee Chuna ended in 1983 after nearly a decade of tension. The breaking point came when Don was told he had macular degeneration, a disease that threatened to take away his eyesight. The news crushed him. For a man whose job depended on timing, expressions, and performance, the possibility of blindness was too much to bear. Laura Lee later admitted that his sadness over the diagnosis and the way it ate him up was what finally ended their marriage. Thankfully, surgery brought back much of his vision, but the scare left deep emotional scars. Don's depending on smoking throughout his life had already done its damage. By the late 1990s, he was facing lung cancer. Though he had stopped smoking more than a decade earlier, the disease came back to collect its debt. Even then, Don kept the seriousness of his illness quiet, not wanting to break the image fans held of him. To his children, he still cracked jokes and brushed off questions, saying he would get better. In the middle of this trouble, Don found unexpected love on Seymour. In 1987, while working on the sitcom What a Country, he met actress Frances Yarborough. At the time, she was much younger and worked behind the scenes helping Don with lines. Their connection seemed unlikely, but over time, it grew into something real. In 2002, they married, giving Don the steadiness he had long wanted but rarely found. Frances later said she was drawn to his weakness, the way he could make the world laugh, while privately fighting so much pain. Their years together were short. By 2006, Don's cancer had gotten worse beyond treatment. Even as his health failed, he refused to give into sadness. He kept up his humor, performing one last private show for family and friends who visited him at his bedside. His daughter Karen remembered that even as he lay dying, he made them laugh so hard that she had to leave the room. It was his final gift, the instinct to create laughter in the face of death. The final goodbye and daughters telling in February 2006, Don's condition got worse. The cancer spread and doctors at UCLA Medical Center knew his time was short. Family and close friends gathered quietly around his bedside. Among them was Andy Griffith, the man who had once been his partner in television magic. Griffith later remembered those final moments in an interview with Larry King. He whispered to Don, calling him Jess, a name known only to the closest of friends, and begged him to keep breathing. Though Don could no longer speak, he moved his shoulder slightly, a final sign that he had heard that their friendship stayed unbroken even at the edge of death. It was a private goodbye between two men whose friendship had defined an era of television. Karen Knotts, his daughter, was also there holding his hand. She later admitted that her father's instinct for comedy never left him. Even as he struggled to breathe, he said or did something so funny that Karen and her stepmother burst into laughter. Karen ran out of the room ashamed to in front of her dying father. Years later, she felt very bad about it. A director friend reminded her that laughter was what Don lived for and that he would have wanted her to stay. I should have just stood there and laud, she later said. That was why he was at 81 years old. Don Knotts passed away in February 24, 2006. The man who had brought so much joy left quietly with his family at his side. His final wife, Frances Yarborough, got his estate, but the legacy Don left was not measured in property. It was in the laughter echoing across generations. In her memoir, Tied Up in Knots, Karen finally told the full truth about her father's life. The painful childhood, the lifelong battle with anxiety, the loneliness that fame could never heal. She did not write to expose him, but to honor him, to show that the lovable Barney Fife was a man of great complexity. Her words remind us that the ones who make us laugh the hardest are often the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. Don Knotts lived a life full of opposites. To the world, he was the beloved helper cop who stumbled his way into television history. To his family, he was a man fighting demons of anxiety, loneliness, and weak health. His daughter Karen, now 71, has broken her silence not to make his image look bad, but to give us the whole truth, a reminder that even the brightest laughter often comes from the darkest places. What remains is his legacy of joy, of unforgettable contrast, and of courage in the face of private pain. Don Knotts never stopped making people laugh, even in his final hours. That perhaps is the truest measure of his gift.